The Indiana Jones franchise is one of my favorite film series of all time. The original three movies are legendary. The action, the characters, the effects, the music, all of it is as iconic can get. Raiders of the Lost Ark is my personal favorite film of all time that I have rewatched so many times that I could probably recite it verbatim. I've grown up on these movies for as long as I can remember, and they all, not you, hold a special place in my heart. And it all ended perfectly with Indy and his friends literally riding off into the sunset in The Last Crusade. It really couldn't have gotten any better than that. And over 30 years later, that's still true. When it was announced that there would be a fifth and final movie, on one hand, I was excited because it was more Indy. It was more the thing that I love. But on the other hand, I was afraid that I would be disappointed and it could possibly be worse than Crystal Skull. But thankfully, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was alright. Nothing incredible, but okay. Dial of Destiny takes place in 1969, following Indy as he's getting ready to retire, but is thrust into a new adventure due to the antics of his goddaughter, which also involve a ghost from his past. And now it's a race against time as both Indy and company reach the Dial of Destiny before the Nazis get it and rewrite history to win World War II. Now, before going into the film, I did what any self-respecting person would do and rewatched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. On rewatch, I did end up getting more enjoyment from it than I originally had, and in general, now have a more positive opinion of it. I don't think it's as bad as many originally made it out to be when it first came out. Though I still can't call it a good movie, with there just being too many things going against it. And that's what Dial of Destiny had to be better than. I knew damn well that it would never reach the same heights as the original films, since they're practically untouchable. So I went into this film with those expectations, knowing it wouldn't be as good as the originals, but it had to be better than Crystal Skull. And I think going in with that mindset made my viewing experience way more enjoyable. I mean, to some extent, it really wasn't that hard to top crap like this. Compared to all of the other films, this one definitely feels the slowest in terms of what's going on. It's kind of a good way to show that Indy is slowing down and is getting ready to put up the hat, with this being his last adventure. Although that does lead to this film not being as grand and as exciting as the originals, but it does still have quite a lot of good action to offer. The different chase scenes and fight scenes were relatively good, and it was extremely nice to see that they were all almost entirely practical, helping give them that feeling of realism. Character-wise, everyone was fine enough here. Indy himself was decent, although old and battered, was still able to keep up with the action and was still entertaining. You could tell Harrison Ford was having a good time with this film, and it showed in his performance. A lot of people seem to have a problem with Helena, Indy's goddaughter, who for the most part I found to be decent enough. I can definitely tell why people may not like her, since she does kind of come off as irritating from time to time, being very nonchalant and somewhat blunt, but for the most part I was kind of indifferent to her. I thought she was just fine, I guess. Mads Mikkelsen as Dr. Voller was a pretty good villain, all things considering. I like the fact that Voller is also a man of science and facts, like Indy, and is sort of his equal in that regard. I just wish that we got to see more of him, though. Mads Mikkelsen plays him incredibly well, and I feel as though he should have gotten more time on screen to shine. One of the best parts about this film is the fact that it actually feels like one of the original movies, in terms of its filmmaking. While Crystal Skull may be more visually entertaining than this one, and have more of that Lucas Spielberg DNA in it, it also looks and feels like an outdated video game with its green screen and ridiculous set pieces. Here though, almost everything is practical, from the vehicle chases to the sets themselves, but unlike the last film, the CGI is used in moderation and actually looks good, especially compared to a lot of other movies coming out recently. So I'm happy that it was good in that regard at least. Additionally, the different camera angles and shots help make everything feel exciting, pulling you right into the action and keeping the adrenaline going. That kind of stuff was really appreciated, and it was nice to see that kind of stuff happen. Now, the film does have its fair share of problems, first of which being the runtime. Why the hell is it 2 hours and 30 minutes long? Because I can tell you after seeing the movie, there really wasn't a good reason as to why it went on that long. There are parts that certainly could have been trimmed to keep the runtime from being as bloated as it was, especially since the previous 4 films were able to keep theirs to around 2 hours. The pacing didn't help either. Whereas I liked that this film was a bit slower than the previous ones, it didn't mesh well with the length. If it were perhaps like 20 minutes shorter, it would have been fine, but there's a lot of moments here that really could have been written better to not take up so much time. The side characters as well really weren't that memorable this time around. I mean, at the very least, they were better than this clown in Crystal Skull. But many of them just felt extremely underutilized, such as with Antonio Banderas' character, who I really wish we could have gotten to see more of in this movie, because he was really charismatic and had a good relationship with Indy, it seems. So it would have been nice to see more stuff with him, since it could have been fun. There was also this kid who sticks around for almost the entire film, but it feels like we didn't get to know enough about him, and any character traits that he had weren't developed enough, or at least properly shown. Ironically enough, the best part of this film was the opening sequence. Like I said, it felt almost exactly like the original films with the tension and action, and I've gotta say that as much as I was worried about de-aged Harrison Ford being used, for the most part, it looks incredible. Sure, certain moments he can look a little wonky, and the scene is set at night to clearly cover up that stuff, but in general, it was shockingly good. But that whole scene can leave the rest of the film not feeling as satisfying for people, since the rest isn't really as exciting in comparison. But look, I know that at the end of the day, I'll still be rewatching the original trilogy over these last two films every time, and consider The Last Crusade to be where the series truly ended. But I can at least die happy knowing that the last film in the franchise is ending on a positive note, rather than a sour one. Dial of Destiny may not be incredible, and it may be pretty safe, slow, and boring at times, but for the most part, I thought it was decent. All it had to be was adequate. Nothing more, and nothing less. And looking at it from that perspective, I think the film succeeds with flying colors, though I do think it is missing that Spielbergian magic that made the original so incredible. But at the same time, even Spielberg himself couldn't recapture that in Crystal Skull. And I think that goes to illustrate the point that the originals were a product of their time. They're terrific because of when they came out, before films became CGI messes. Everything felt real because it was, and because everyone working on them were still young and full of energy. Dial of Destiny feels tired and ready to stop, which doesn't make it bad, but it certainly makes it not feel as exhilarating as the films once were. I may be more positive about this film than I have any right to be, but I truly do think that it's a decent film and a decent send-off for Indiana Jones. But for the love of God, don't make any more movies. Do literally anything else Disney, like do books or comics, video games, animated shows, or something. This should be the final Indiana Jones movie. If Disney needs to milk the property, there's plenty of other avenues. Just stop doing movies. But anyways, I'm really torn between two ratings for this film, and I can't decide on which one it is, and it's probably gonna flip-flop between either one for the next couple of months. So, for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10.